Dershowitz has been desperate to prevent this book from being, first of all, he tried to stop it from being published in an outlandish effort, which I've never seen anything like it, hiring major law firm to threaten libel suits, writing to the governor of California. It was published by University of California Press. When he couldn't stop the publication, he launched a jihad against Norman Finkelstein, simply to try to vilify and defame it, in the hope that maybe what he's writing will disappear. That's the background. It's not, incidentally, the first time. I mean, I happen to be very high on Dershowitz's hate list, and he's also produced outlandish lies about me for years. You know, I told him I was an agnostic about the Holocaust. I mean, I wouldn't tell him the time of day, you know, and so on and so forth.
You mean that he made that charge against you?
And on and on. I won't talk about it. What's the reason? It's in print. In fact, you can even look at it in the internet. In 1973, I guess it was, the leading Israeli human rights activist, Israel Shachak, who incidentally is a survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto in Bergen-Belsen, and headed a small human rights group in Israel, which was the only real one at the time, came to Boston, had an interview with the Boston Globe, which he identified himself correctly as the chair of the Israeli League of Human Rights. Dershowitz wrote a vitriolic letter to the Globe condemning him, claiming he's lying about Israel. He's even lying about being the chair. He was voted out by the membership. I knew the facts. In fact, he's an old friend, Shachak. So I wrote a letter to the Globe explaining it wasn't true. In fact, the government did try to get rid of him. They called on their membership to flood the meeting of this small human rights group and vote him out. But they brought it to the courts, and the courts said, yeah, we'd like to get rid of this human rights group, but find a way to do it that's not so blatantly illegal. So I sort of wrote that. Dershowitz thought he could brazen it out, you know, Harvard law professor. So he wrote another letter saying, Shachak's lying, I'm lying. And he challenged me to quote from the Israeli court decision. Never occurred to him for a minute that I'd actually have the transcript, but I did. So I wrote another letter in which I quoted from the court decision, demonstrating that it's polite, but that Dershowitz is a liar. He's even falsifying Israeli court decisions. He's a supporter of atrocities, and he even is a passionate opponent of civil rights. I mean, this is like the Russian government destroying an Amnesty International chapter by flooding it with Communist Party members to vote out the membership. Well, he went berserk, you know, and ever since then, I've been one of his targets. In fact, anyone who exposes him as what he is going to be subjected to this technique because he knows he can't respond, so must return to vilification. And in the case of Norman Finkelstein, he sort of went off into outer space. But it's an outrageous case. And the fact that it's even being debated is outrageous. Because just read his letters of recommendation from literally the leading figures in the many fields in which he works, most respected people.
Most interesting, the letters of support from the leading Holocaust scholars, yes, like Raoul Hilberg.
Raoul Hilberg is the founder of Holocaust studies, you know, the most distinguished figure in the field. In fact, he says Norman didn't go far enough.